Welcome back, Raw Thoughts, to another episode with me, Mackenzie Tiggs. Today, I'm so excited to have two guests on with me. And I'm going to tell you, their tagline is sober, not mature. And you better go follow them on Instagram right now because their posts are freaking hilarious. So, welcome, guys.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So, tell us who we have with us today.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Mike.
All right. And how did you guys get connected? What's your story? Like, who are you?
Who the hell are we?
Um, right. Well, we met at a sober living facility. We're only 4 days apart in our sobriety.
Mhm.
So had it not been for getting sober, being sober, that sort of thing, we certainly never would have met.
Mm.
We always joke around. We're like, look at him, look at me. There's no reason why we would have hung out in the same circles. And seriously, there's no reason we ever would have met, right, Mike?
No, absolutely not. I mean, maybe run into each other in a bar, and we certainly wouldn't have hung out together in the bar. So, no. Yes.
Right.
Sobriety
Mike
brought us
said,
together.
Mike's Yeah, Mike
That's
said one time
awesome.
he probably would have robbed me is all it would have
Yeah.
been, so
Yeah. He'd have been an easy mark.
Mm. Oh my goodness. I was gonna say you definitely would be the type of people that sit across from each other at the bar and be like, what
Right.
the fuck is he doing? And what is he doing? And then just judge each other. And then yeah, I could see Mike mugging you.
But yeah, look at that face. He's a nice guy, he doesn't want to admit it,
Yeah.
but he is a nice guy now. Now he is.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to dive in. You guys met at this sober event. That is what you guys have in common, which is phenomenal to be able to connect off of that. What is your journey? I'm going to start with Bill through sobriety.
Okay. Well, it was actually a sober living facility, not a well, it was an event, that's for damn sure, but
Okay, so is that like an actual facility, like a house?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And so basically what happened is the two of us went into detox separately. I was in Wisconsin, he was in Cleveland. I got taken out to Cleveland to this sober living facility, which is it's not a rehab. It's literally a place where they teach you and show you again how to be a decent human being and live sober. Mike was taken to the same place as basically a suggestion from the hospital, if I remember correctly. So that's where we ended up meeting, and we were in it's basically a recovery center, but not a rehab is where we actually met. We're both still affiliated with that center, Mike more so than I am, just because he's in Cleveland still. But yeah, that's where we ended up meeting. But so do you want to hear a little bit of background on what happened to us and how we got to that point?
Absolutely.
Okay. I was actually gonna let Mike go first because he's usually more brief than I am, but I'll look at his face and he'll be the one to be like, and I don't know when to shut up. So um I'll make it brief though. I had no issues with childhood. Yes, my dad's an alcoholic or was an alcoholic. I didn't go through any. We talk about this a lot. A lot of people base their drinking and their alcoholism on trauma. Mike and I certainly had bad points in our lives, but nothing that we can point to that said, this is why I drank. Both of us feel that we were, if not genetically predisposed, like getting fucked up, as Mike likes to say. And that's what happened. I never drank normally, whatever normally is. If I ever drank one, it was because I could have more later. I really didn't drink that much in high school until probably junior year. Junior, senior year, drank with the parties like everyone else did. Ended up going to school at college or in college for a year. Drank like college kids do, which was a lot. After that, I lived with my dad for about a year with my then wife, who I got pregnant. So I've got 2 children, knocked both of those women up and married them both. So that's my story on that end. But we didn't drink, her and I didn't drink probably for 8 or 9 months, up to almost a year when we lived with my dad, just because he didn't drink. I didn't try to quit drinking at that time frame, but after we got out of there, different people we hung out, different friends. It wasn't anyone that was influencing me. We just hung out and drank and partied. I drank myself through that relationship. I got a DUI during that time frame right afterwards, actually. Met my second wife about 6 years after that. Um, same type of thing, kept drinking. The time I got my DUI, which is 1994, was definitely problematic drinking at that time frame. Easily an alcoholic, certainly not as bad as I ended up, but definitely at that point. Um, That was the only real huge consequence as far as, like, a legal consequence. I've been arrested a couple of times, based on, results of drinking and that sort of thing. All of those are completely unimportant. Just know that I burned through 2 marriages. I haven't been arrested yet since I've been sober, but I was arrested 5 times from the age of 17 to 41, based on directly on my drinking. Um, Burned through that 2nd marriage. I have 2 children, 1 from each marriage, but my 2nd wife pretty much started to figure out what was going on with me. Accused me of drinking, accused me of being an alcoholic. She was right, but I denied it. Almost lost custody of my son through the divorce, but I lied my way through that. That was 2006 when we split. I didn't get sober until 2010. That 4 years was nothing but hell. Really dark, a lot of increased drinking. I don't wanna say depression, I didn't feel good about myself and just drank more. The last probably couple years, at least the last year that I drank, I don't think I drew a sober breath. Morning, I drink before work, I drink at night till I passed out. Once again, no legal consequences, but, certainly wasn't, being a very good human being. I finally hit detox in April of 2010. The short story there is my landlord noticed there was an issue. I hadn't gone to work in a few days. I hadn't paid my rent, which is, kind of traditional and, something that a lot of us do, tend to spend all our money on booze. um, he came over, saw that how I looked, called my sister because he knew my sister. My sister had actually co-signed for that apartment because I couldn't do it on my own. Um, Long story short, there she came up. I went into detox, and my blood alcohol level was 0.44 when I went into detox. Look at those eyebrows.
I
I
know.
needed
Yeah.
and I needed to go to detox. I never tried to stop on my own up to that point. One time that was actually revealed, I would say, Mike, right on this podcast when I recognized that I had some sort of issue because when I was like 36 years old and I was 41 when I got sober, 36 was when my dad got sober. And I kind of looked in the mirror and said, I'm not that bad. So there was that slight glimpse of realizing I had a problem, but I never tried to do anything about it. So I was taking a detox, taking out the Cleveland. I did not want to get sober. I was angry. I was pissy. Things he'll all back up because he's known me pretty much since day one. Um, but ended up in this sober living facility, which again is where Mike and I met. And we can tell more about that, but obviously Mike can share his journey up to that point. But I needed to stop drinking. I am a full blown raging alcoholic, a real alcoholic, if we want to call it that, right, Mike?
Right.
No question at all that I needed to do it. But it took me 6, 8, 9 months to really kind of get my feet under me. But I haven't looked back since. So your turn,
Hey,
Mike.
before
Oh,
I
yeah,
go to
sure.
Mike, I want to ask you a couple questions. Um, you said you were in
Mm.
a dark place, but you didn't want to call it depression, but you
Right.
were still continuing to drink. Why is that?
Basically, my life had not only was falling apart, but had fallen apart based on my own doing. Um, the jobs I had were shit. My relationship with my ex was shit. My family was still sticking around, but they weren't around, so I was pretty much a loner. Um, I don't, I don't know and we have talked about depression. And the thing of it is I know people who suffer from, and have known people, clinical depression and deep depression and thoughts of harming themselves and things like that. I wasn't there, so I qualify that to the extent where I was in this hole, but I don't consider myself, I wasn't like manic depressive or anything like that. In my opinion, I probably would have been diagnosed if I ever would have got checked, but I was just living a miserable existence. And that's what it was. It was an existence.
Yeah. And I just ask because there is a lot of, notion around that word depression. And,
Mhm.
I'm going to say what qualifies you for that. And it's interesting to just hear you say that, with the correlation of being in a dark hole, but not necessarily putting that label of depression on it. So that's just curiosity, really kind of on my side with it. The other thing I want to
And
ask you,
and real quick on that, and the reason that that's on purpose that I do that, because one thing that we were taught, or I guess learned over this process, is that we need to take responsibility for our own behavior. And I don't want to put uh, give myself an excuse for the way that I act or acted, so I take personal responsibility for the reason I was in that situation. Granted, it was a hole and it was deep and it was dark. Sure, call it depression if you want, but I don't listen to that as a or use that as a crutch to say that that was what was
Correct.
causing me my problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Michael, kind of where did your story
Um,
start?
well, again, like Bill said, no deep, dark trauma in my past. My mom was an alcoholic. She raised me, and all that comes with it, came with it. But again, no excuses. I am an alcoholic. I also did a whole lot of drugs. Unlike Bill, Bill's one of those weirdos that actually only just drank. Um, I did everything. But alcohol was my drug of choice. The last 5 years I was out there, all I did was drink because being a junkie is really hard work. And it's much easier to walk to the corner and get what I needed cheap and legally. So that's what I did the last few years I was out there. And I don't differentiate between substances, because there's no point. The big book, and I'm a big booker. I'm a 12 stepper. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I do not represent Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just a member. But it says alcohol is just a symptom, which means that heroin is just a symptom, which means that meth is just a symptom. Whatever I'm putting in myself is just a symptom of my selfishness and self-centeredness. And that was and is my problem. Um, you know, again, the substances are just symptoms of that. Um, my my problem was I wanted to feel good all the time, and, I will scar you for life so I can feel good for 20 minutes. That's my problem. And I needed to stop that. Um, I drank. I always drank. The only time in my adult life I really didn't drink very much was about the year or so I was fully addicted to heroin. Um, I used to joke, heroin cured my alcoholism. Um, that's a joke, kids. Um, so yeah, always drank, heavily. I was not a maintenance drinker. I didn't have that switch. Once I picked up a drink, whether it was a Budweiser or Wild Turkey or 100 proof vodka, I didn't stop until I passed out or ran out or ran out of money. Just didn't. So I wasn't that guy that woke up in the morning and took a couple of pops to get myself to work. I white knuckled it all day to get through work so I could have enough money to get a bottle at the end of the day. That's how I lived my life for decades, when I could manage to go to work. My last, how I got to the Keating Center was, which is the sober living facility we met at. Um, My last drink was a day like any other day. At that point, I didn't have a car. I was living with my daughter. She had gotten pregnant, and we moved in together so I could help her. I had a halfway decent job at the time. 2 years later, she's got a year and a half year old little baby. I'm going down to the temporary agency to make $50 a day so I could get a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of vodka. Um, and that's what I was doing, and that was that day. Like any other day, I got home and I decided I needed more because that's what we do. We always need more. And I was off to the liquor store. But apparently, and I don't remember any of this because I was in a full blown blackout. But apparently, I didn't find it necessary to pull my pants up all the way. We had a very long sloping driveway. I had underwear on. Um, and we had a very long sloping driveway, and I'm out there making my way to the liquor store with my pants around my ankles, tripping, doing head face plants into the concrete down the driveway. My daughter's standing on the porch holding my granddaughter, watching me do this. Um, they called an ambulance. They took me to the hospital. I do sort of, coming around because, it was about an hour or so that I hadn't had a drink. Bill had me beat. He was 0.44. I was 0.42, when they took my breathalyzer. But I was talking and walking and yeah. at that level of alcohol in my system. And they asked me if I needed any help, if they thought I had a problem. And I answered like I always did, no, I'm fine. um, the next day, I got up, they did what they could for me and they were getting ready to release me. And, I never made it to the liquor store that day. Still had a couple of bucks in my pocket. I was going to get a drink because I didn't have a choice. That's what I did. And the phone rang in the hospital room, and it was my daughter, and she said, "Dad, I love you, but I cannot watch you do this to yourself anymore. Um, we're changing the locks, you can't come home." Now, any other day, I'd have went and got that drink and talked my way back into the house. I know I would have. But for some reason, had that moment of clarity, and I realized I was hurting her more than I wanted to. Um, and I didn't know how to not do that. So I called the nurse in and said, "You know what? Yeah, I do need some help." So they sent me off to detox, spent a week there, and then they sent me to the old Keating Center where I met Bill. Like you said, it's not a rehab. I had done rehabs before. I first time was I was about 30. He was out in California. Bunch of crap about, getting in touch with your feelings. You've been ramming your feelings down with drugs and alcohol these years. You need to get in touch with yourself. Ah, no, I didn't. I needed to change the way I was acting because I was acting like a moron, selfish, self-centered little kid. And needless to say, that didn't work. The Keating Center was and is a safe place to be to start working a program. That's all it is. And I decided that I was ready to start working a program to do something different. And from that day until this day, that's what I do on a daily basis. I do things to keep myself away from that first one because I don't have a choice. I am an alcoholic and I am a drug addict. And if I don't do these things that these good people told me to do to stay away from the first one, I'm picking up. It's just that simple. I know it is. So I do this stuff. And yep, so far it's working. And I'm pretty fucking happy today.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that. So how long has it been that you both are sober?
13 years in April.
13 years. Yeah, so 13 years and
Wow.
a few months, yeah. And like I said, the cool part is, once again, us meeting at that time frame, again, no other way we would have met, only 4 days apart in our sobriety, and then, basically right? I mean, we talk about it all the time. It just we kept getting put in positions together, whether it
Mm.
was, doing certain jobs at the Keating Center. We were house fathers, which, helping guys, they were coming in and stuff like that. Then we ended up in the same three-quarter dorm at the house or at the Keating Center facility, then went to a three-quarter house together. And then at that point, and we roomed together. We spent a year in a fucking bedroom together. Now
Yeah.
we did leave. Don't anyone get that. There's the eyebrows again. But yeah, it was a two-family,
Really?
upper lower duplex, and, there was 8 guys in there to start out with, 4 up and 4 down, and we shared a normal size, smallish bedroom, and that's where we got our start, and then we moved in together, but the thing of it is that we've developed this friendship, now is I mean, granted, it started based on sobriety, but, Mike started hanging around our family, God, what, a year in, if that?
Yeah,
Somewhere in
about
that
that.
area?
First
Um
Easter.
and yeah, the first Easter, so basically right
They
around our
fed
1
me and I
year
kept
and,
coming back.
oh,
They couldn't get rid of me after that.
that's the joke, yeah, we always say that, but, now, I mean, I consider him a brother more than a friend, I mean, we're brothers, all of our family, it's our sister now, it was our mom and all that sort of thing, so we developed this thing over the years, and it's a true friendship, and, the fact that we do a podcast and stuff together is just it's just because we just do,
Because we wanted
but it
to.
was it was based on right, but it was based on, the again, sobriety brought us together, and it's been, like you said, pretty goddamn happy for, 13 years now. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, these things don't just happen coincidentally. The fact
right.
of you guys both being in there within days of each other and then making this connection. And just like you choose to do the program every single day, that's a
Mhm.
choice, right?
Absolutely.
So a choice to continue to be friends and to continue to foster that connection that you both have in there.
Yeah, yeah, I have those
Right.
choices today, but if I choose again, if I choose not to do those things, then I don't have a choice. I pick up again and I start hurting
Yeah.
everybody around me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of
When
the
was
things that
in
we
your sorry, go ahead.
um, no, I was just gonna say it's one of the things we talk about all the time, and Mike puts it the best way is that we do all these things every day because we've watched hundreds of people, they stop doing something and they end up, relapsing, and then, we know what happens then, exactly what Mike said, gets out there and hurts everyone again. So we were taught to do things. We still do the same things today, 13 years later as we did day one in the Keating Center, and we don't stop, because we know what happens. We've done the research by watching people. Other people have done the research and showed us the results. So,
Yeah, I think that's great. And through the experience, right? You have seen these people that you have, you know, been around and then relapsing and also recognizing, hey, if I don't do these steps, that could also be me.
Oh, it will be
right.
me. There's no question.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. For somebody that is not an alcoholic and listening to this, what are your steps that you have to do every single day to keep you out of not drinking?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, very often in the rooms, you hear people talk about they work the steps in past tense, which is wonderful. Good for you. The way we were taught was we do 4, 5, and 8 to the best of our ability, and we never have to do them again. That's what the 10th step is for. It's maintenance to keep ourselves from doing that. But personally, I do 1, 2, and 3 before I get out of bed in the morning every day. I have to. I have to remind myself of exactly what I am because I wake up and I'll look around this big old house I live in, and it is big and it is old. And I'll go, hey, shit's pretty good, But that first step, thankfully, is the only one I have to do perfectly. I am powerless over the substance. I'm powerless over a lot of things, and my life is unmanageable. And to this day, my life is unmanageable. I do not manage my own life. This program, these principles, these steps, the people around me, they help manage my life. And if I allow that to happen, then I have a pretty good life. The minute I take it back and I start trying to manage my own life again, I'm going to fuck it up because I have every day for decades and decades of my life. So as long as I allow this thing to manage my life and keep me in the lane and keep me doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I got a shot at this, you know? Um, and it's simple, pray, go to meetings, help another drunk. That was drilled into
Right.
our head over and over and over again. Um, the bottom line though is be a good boy. That was drilled into our heads over and over. Do the next right thing. And as long as we're doing that, we're okay, you know? Um, we hear all the time. I mean, You know, it doesn't matter what I think, which I'm very grateful for as well. Gratitude's a huge thing, right? But it doesn't matter what I think
Yeah.
because my thoughts are still all kinds of fucked up. They are. They always will be. I accept that. Um, but it's what I do, my actions. And my actions are doing the next right thing. My first thought, somebody cuts me off in traffic. My first thought is, I'm going to kill that motherfucker. I'm gonna get into a race with him and I'm gonna cut him off and but that's my thought. But my action is fuck them, let them go, move along and and
Bless you.
and just,
Thank
do
you.
the right thing. And that's what I do. I do the right thing every day.
Yeah.
I fall short
Yeah.
every day, but I try.
And I think that's such a simple example that it doesn't have to be if you're an alcoholic or not
Mm.
to do that, right? There's
Right.
so many people that can trigger them so quickly of they did this to me, now I need revenge.
Mhm.
Let it fucking go.
Yeah, right.
Well, and the other thing too, and I mean, again, both of us went through the same facility. We both got raised up in a 12-step program. We both practice all of those principles in all of our affairs today, and that's cool. Other people either want to cut down, they're sober curious, whatever you want to call those things these days is fine. Um, We do quote from the big book because it's what we were taught, what we live by. But our podcast isn't a do this or else type of thing. And when we talk to people, if somebody comes to us and has questions about drinking, um, it's one of the things we're taught. And what the program teaches us is not to accuse, label, or even give people this is what you have to do. If you want to, take a look at what we're doing. And it is simple. The reason he laughed about pray, go to meetings, and help another alcoholic is I didn't I didn't get that for the first 9 months, and it was driving me fucking nuts. I mean, literally to the point where that was one of the things, it was 2 at that time frame that probably would have caused me to relapse at that time, and all these people are relapsing, all these people are going out, and I just asked them, I'm like, they tell us, "Pray, go to meetings, help another alcoholic." I'm like, "Could it really be that simple?" And my friend Mike just said, "Yes," and he fucking walked away. And I was like, okay." And literally, I was 9 months sober at that time frame, and there was one other thing that I had, kinda clicked at that time frame also, but it is really that simple, but people have to have the desire, little bit of faith, little bit of hope, but they have to have that desire. That's that first step, having that desire, it's the first step, the first requirement of being in this program, but people can try to do all they want. If they have no desire, people don't have a desire to work out and be healthy, they're not gonna work out and stay healthy. People that have a desire to eat right, they're not gonna do it. A lot of this stuff has nothing to do with alcoholism. The 12 steps, if anyone wants to take a look at them, the first one's the only one that mentions alcohol. The rest of them, if you read them as if somebody was giving you a to-do list on life, that's what they are. That's it. You know? We have a lot of normies, people that are non-alcoholics, non-drinkers, people that just listen to us because they're like, "That seems like something I might wanna try." Or they look into, recovery literature for the same thing. There's nothing hard about it. It's a simple program for right complicated people, and
Mhm.
that's us.
Yeah. Yeah. For both of you guys, and I think it comes back to that desire. How come it did take you truly that long and not that self awareness to say, what I'm doing is hurting other people? What I'm doing is hurting myself. I know you, Mike, said it was very selfish,
Mhm.
right? You were only thinking about yourself. But how did you accrue that? You just to to being around that and to being that person, not having good examples, not being around the people, or was it just in your own mind and brain that you're like, no, life is only about me?
Oh, it was that way from the beginning. I mean, I was a liar, a cheat, and a thief long before I picked up a drink. I remember being, my earliest memories were, someone would ask me a question and I would lie. I saw something I wanted. I sure as hell didn't want to work for it. I just took it. That's the kind of person I was. That's the way I came out. Um, and and that's the way I lived my life. And as a consequence of that, I ended up alone and miserable. And realized finally, pulled my head out of my ass and and went, well, this is not good. There's got to be a better way to do this thing. And thankfully AA showed me a better way, a different way to live my life. And one of the big things was stop thinking about yourself so much. Bill mentioned depression. I think a lot of people, yes, there's a clinical physical depression that some people have, but this is just my opinion, but I think about 85% of the people that say they're depressed are basically just focusing on themselves, All they're thinking about is themselves. I mean, if I'm feeling bad, it's generally because I'm thinking about myself too much, and the best way for me to get out of it is go help somebody else. And the next thing you know, I'm not thinking about myself and I feel better. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Being that
Yeah,
servant,
yeah, being of
Oh,
service
yeah,
to
and
helping
that's
the
a
world.
others.
Yeah.
it's a huge part of, any most recovery programs, but certainly AA is, doing that service work. And, whether it's the podcast, even coming on here, doing things like this and getting information out to people, can be service. And I mean, we mess around a lot. We talk a lot of shit, and we Well, you see our Instagram posts. We're a little bit thick-minded, and I'm just saying, I'm not trying to take credit for it. I'm to blame. I do all the social media posting, but, I don't post anything that Mike wouldn't post himself and
Mm,
that he wouldn't laugh his ass off at,
right.
so, but and, you had asked about, like, background and examples and things like that. And again, the person we called our mom, after Mike got involved in our family, but, my mom was a good individual, a hardworking woman. I respected the hell out of her. Well, let me put that back or take that back. After I got sober, I respected all the work she did for me and for us over the years. I didn't really respect all the hard work she did to that point, but she worked her ass off. She was a good individual. She wasn't out hurting people. Everyone has their faults, but I wasn't molded by her activities. And my dad, he got sober when I was 12. I mean, granted, he was a piece of shit like I was up until that point. But again, a decent human being. Our sister is she's a wonderful human being, one of the best people on this planet. So it was just the way that I was. I was self-centered, I was egotistical, I still am, not as bad. I was narcissistic easily towards the end. Why? I don't know. It was how I was wired. It was all about me, and I didn't really give a flying fuck what other people thought. Um, and it just is what it is. But the whole point is that in a recovery program, especially with AA, and Mike usually says this quite a bit, but and looks like he might have lost his internet. Hopefully he'll be back. Um,
Yeah.
but he'll say that, in recovery, we're taught to act differently, so we think differently. They teach us how to act better so then we think differently. Whereas, like a lot of psychology and that sort of thing, it's the other way around. They try to change your thoughts so you act differently. Basically, what most recovery programs, but certainly AA does, they're like, okay, we're going to show you how to walk, we're going to show you how to act, we're going to show you what to do, and then it just ends up
So
changing your thoughts. So,
yeah, I love what you said that about, that in psychology because especially being in psychology, really mental health is three things: how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And that
mhm,
can go, up or down. We can look at and reflect on our actions and say, why am I doing these actions? And this is the way I was feeling. And then prior to that, this is the way that I was thinking. And the reverse, you can also start, changing your thought process of if I'm thinking positive, if I'm thinking, like Mike said, about others instead of myself being a
right,
servant, then that's going to make me start feeling good, which then in my actions are going to follow and I'm going to do the things being a servant, even opening a door for somebody,
right,
not getting mad when somebody cuts us off in traffic. Like those tiny little aspects where it doesn't have to be this grandiose, crazy extreme situation that's occurring. It's a reflection of what is happening.
right. Yeah, and a lot of times to Mike's point too, that we still have the thoughts, but we're taught to pause, where
Mhm.
before I used to just if somebody did something, I would react. And I'll be honest with you, technology could be kind of shitty in a lot of ways, very impersonal and that sort of thing. But text messaging and emails can be huge saviors for anyone with a little bit of a selfish complex. Because if somebody says, "Do you want to do something? You wanted this, you wanted that?" Do you have that opportunity to take a minute, and think about what you say before you do it? In person, we're taught to pause, take a breath, or that sort of thing, or say, "I'm not sure," and check back with me or let me think about it and I'll get back to you. So then we're not, immediately spitting out whatever that initial thought is in our head. The thought's still there, but the action isn't anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that thought, you are able to recognize it, right?
Right.
That's the important part is being able to recognize it. That, hey, if I continue down with these same thoughts, it's going to make me feel like I want to go take a drink. And then the next action is, or the action is going to be that you are getting a drink. You're
Mhm.
putting a break between that thinking process and that action process. And that's really neat to see you do, especially with this aspect. And also how you said that the 12 steps are translatable.
Mhm.
Yes, the first one talks about being alcoholic, but the, I mean, we don't get taught how to be people. We don't get taught how to be humans.
Right.
We're we're impacted, we're influenced by a lot of things, but us personally, there isn't a lot of, that's like put in front of us at a young age. It's like, figure yourself out.
Right.
It's other people telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing.
And I'll give you a good example because this was given to us when we were at the Keating Center when we were probably only 30 days sober. Everyone's been on an escalator, obviously an up escalator. So up escalator, down escalator. Obviously, if you step on one, it does all the work, right? But if you've ever tried to walk up an escalator that's going down, that's a good example of what we need to do in recovery every day. So if you can physically walk up an escalator going down, but if you stop, what's going to happen? You're going to go down with it. So that's the concept that was given to us. We always have to keep moving. We always have to keep moving forward. We always have to, and probably the escalator was the at least the analogy of working on the steps continuously and adding those to you because and everyone can envision that. And it's even if you're in denial about where you're at, like, and I'm talking about us, we could envision and we could see, in our heads that, okay, yeah, if I stop, I'm gonna go backwards. And the other analogy is you're either moving away from a drink or towards a drink, and that's with constant motion. If you're not in constant motion, then you're going to be taken back towards that drink, back towards your bad activities, back towards your bad behavior, and then that's gonna lead, to a relapse. So,
Yeah. And I love you saying that because it's also the intentionality behind which direction you're going towards,
right,
right? Because you could give up, and that even just giving up or not doing the work is getting you closer to that dream
correct,
instead of, intentionally every single day doing the steps and working towards being further away from that dream.
right. And there's a process. So we used to go in, there was a meditation group and not a sit down like type of meditation, but there was a reading that we did from a Hazelden book, which is a recovery book. It's 24 hours a day is the reading we used to do at the Keating Center. So that was a habit that was started with us. I got there on my 7th day sober. I think Mike got there on his 8th day, whatever it is. So both of us have been reading that book for 13 years and a few months, every single day at the daily reading. And then he got popped away again. Yeah. But then he added another book and then another book, and I've added a few other books. So there's process that each one of us do every single day, and that's how we start the day. And Mike will say certain things, kind of a mantra that he has in the morning before he even gets out of bed. Then he reads his 2 meditation books, and for me, I do 4 little readings. I look at my sobriety counter, and I do a short set of prayers. Neither one of us are religious. He's actually an atheist. I'm at best agnostic. So that also, and for if anyone's curious, you don't have to be a religious or a church person to go to AA. There's a lot of God mentioning in books and literature and that sort of thing. Don't get me wrong, but it's all talking about like something that's greater than us. Worst case scenario.
Mhm.
And the way it was explained is that we don't have to believe because I didn't really have a problem with church. I just didn't have a power in my life like that. But all that they said is just all we have to understand is it's not us. As long as I know that I'm not the end all be all, and clearly I'm not. I'm not the one doing any of this stuff out here. Then it's easy for me to figure out that okay, there's something above me, whatever it is. And then that's one thing we have where you get a little bit of that belief in there. So
And I like you saying that because I think a lot of people put, faith as that it does have to be a God figure, it does have to be a religion.
mhm,
And faith simply means putting power in something greater than yourself, whether
right,
that be the universe, whether that be Buddhism, whether that be whatever you want to call that, that it is putting your faith into something bigger than your capabilities, knowing that the path that you are on, yes, your path, you and Mike, both of your guys' path has not been the easiest. But the greatest thing is that you are able to come on and be able to teach others. And that is of a servant heart. And that is of a, way of, yeah, your road was pretty shitty. A lot of us have pretty shitty roads.
right.
but it's what we do with them and how we react to them and how we teach others about them instead of sitting here, like you said, kind of in a pity party.
Mhm. And that's one of the things that we were taught that, all of this garbage, because it's really easy, and Mike and I were just talking about it the other night on our podcast, is, there's regret, there's shame, there's all these ideas, of all those sort of things, and the beauty of this is that, sure, we can look back and say, "Okay," whether it's time wasted or opportunities missed or whatever the deal is, but all the like you said, all the garbage we went through up to the point that we got sober is now, this whole big bag full of tools that we get to actually talk about and tell silly stories sometimes, but, again, possibly help other people. So all that stuff that the struggle, if you wanna call it that way, now becomes an asset, and that's the way that we have to look at it. We don't have regrets. We don't regret the things that we went through or, maybe got or didn't get because it's just not worth it, you know?
Yeah. I love what you just said right there was, about your struggles being your assets.
Mhm. Yep.
That is incredible.
Yeah, and it's, believe me, it's not an original thought. Yeah, we always talk
I
about the
mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's super great. So we heard a little bit, and for the listeners, Mike's having a little trouble hopping on and hopping off. So this is why it's gone from having two of them down to one.
Right?
Um, so I want you to talk about kind of what your ritual is every morning. I know you said you did, your 4 passages and your prayers, but how is it that you are staying sober for now 13 years?
Well, and I'll give you the short story. To begin with, I did. I went to a lot of meetings because we had to. Then I went to meetings because I wanted to. Then I went to meetings because at certain times because I figured I needed to in order to stay sober. I don't do a lot of meetings these days. A lot of circumstances, but the pandemic was a kick in one direction. But every single day, even if I don't do a meeting or something like that, basically the 4 readings and literally it doesn't matter what happens, what day it is, where I'm at. Mike and I just went up to the Harley reunion over the weekend and, we're staying in a hotel room by ourselves. I went outside and did my reading and did my prayers and he did it in the room. Not that I don't want to do it around Mike, but that's my time. We're around family, we're around friends. It doesn't matter. We do these things. So I get up, I sit down, I read through the books, I do the little set of prayers, I close out with a prayer that's from one of the steps, and then that's the way I start my day. Even when our mom died, I got the phone call, and my sister called me and woke me up. So I told her, I'm like, once it kind of kicked into my head, it's like, all right, so I have to do this before I do anything else. So I did that. So it's my point there, it had nothing to do I'm not special. Mike's not special, with any of that stuff. We always talk about that. We're not unique. But if we don't do those things every day, we're convinced that sooner or later we start to take away and things are going to go again, that we're going to go back down that escalator and one of us we're going to relapse again. And it's my opinion. And this didn't come up yet, but, this is my first run at this. I've never tried to get sober before. I have not relapsed yet, and I always say "yet" because, "Hey, Mike, what's up with you?"
Oh,
Yeah.
hey, that's
Yeah, we saw
actually
you
finally
popping back in
worked.
and out. But yeah, so I this is my first run at this, but, I'm
Mm.
very, I will always make this extremely clear. Um, Only reason is because, I followed steps, I followed people, I followed examples, and I've done the work. That's it. If I stop following people, steps, and examples and stop doing the work, number 1, I'm gonna relapse, and I'm too much of an egotist to come back, so I'm gonna drink myself to death, and I don't wanna do that today. So, um that's kinda where that's at. Yeah, we were just talking about you a little bit too. She was just asking our routine, so I went through
Good.
that, and then it came into that part of it, and
Right.
yeah, you just
Well,
kinda dropped out. I'm
I
like, "Ah,
kinda
Mike will
popped
be
in
back."
right. Maybe. This is about the last time, man. I was about to throw my computer across the room. But I didn't. Actions and thoughts.
Right.
But I
Hey,
heard
that's
I
funny because that's literally what we were talking about when you weren't here.
Yeah.
right. Well, like Bill said, I popped in a couple of times, but I was trying to get back in and I was hearing a little bit. Um, Actions and thoughts. The reason I laughed with the prayer, go to meetings, help another drunk, I'm an atheist. I always have to point that out. I'm still an atheist. And when I walked into the rooms, I was scared to friggin' death because I knew I had to find a power greater than myself. Um, but guess what? This atheist prays twice a day because it's one of those things they told me to do. So I go through the action. It's simple. You know, I wake up in the morning and I say please, and I lay it down my head at night and I say thank you. I personally don't believe anything is listening to me, and it doesn't matter if anything's listening to me. The point is, I do it. I take the action every day. I don't need to believe it. I don't need to feel it in my heart. I need to fucking do it. And I do. And it works. Imagine that.
Yeah, just so you know, you did miss. I mentioned that you were an atheist, and I was at best
Oh,
agnostic.
good.
So, but no, I'm glad you just popped in, and you explained yourself, which was perfect. So,
Right.
Yeah. So I am curious about that.
Mm.
That doesn't change your mind of believing that there's a higher power of some sort when you are praying,
No, of course not. No, it doesn't
which is
matter.
a very curious. Yeah.
Right, right. No, but that's the thing. It doesn't matter. Do I have powers greater than myself in my life? Absolutely. Alcoholics Anonymous is a power greater than myself. The one thing I have learned and I am thoroughly convinced of, no matter what your higher power is, I don't care what it is because it doesn't matter to me. What matters is you are a part of it and you do its work. So if you do that, if you are a part of that power that is greater than you, and you do the work of that power that's greater than you, then you have a power greater than you in your life to help guide you. That's all it is. You know, if it's Jesus, if it's Buddha, it's, Allah, it's whatever. If it's a tree, plant more trees, you
right,
know, water the tree, take care of it, prune it, make sure it's healthy. Yeah, doesn't matter. Um, Real early on, Bill knows this, and yeah, there was another atheist in a group I went to, a 12 and 12 group, discussion group. And he had the greatest line that I adopted very early on, and I still have it to this day. I don't believe in the great pumpkin, but it seems to make Linus happy. And I leave it at that. I don't fight it anymore. I used to fight, and try to convince you that what you believed was wrong. If it's making your life better and it's making the people around you's lives better, I don't care what you believe. Please don't care what I believe.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's great because I think there's so many, you know, conflicts now of labels of, oh, I'm this
Mm,
and you're that and we
right.
can't be friends,
right,
No.
And I think it's hilarious that you guys, talk about like if it wasn't for sobriety, like you guys actually wouldn't be friends. And
Mm,
simply looking, like you guys don't look like, right, the same
right,
people or that you would
mm,
hang out in the same crowd.
right.
right,
But that doesn't mean that you guys both aren't humans, that you couldn't have a connection some other way,
Oh,
But I
absolutely.
think,
Well, we're both alcoholics, and
right,
we found the solution together. Right.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, right. I used to think I was different. I used to think I was special. I used to think I'm a unique. I'm not. I'm a garden variety drunk. That's all I am. You did a whole
right.
bunch of dope. Yeah, that's all. And again, like you said, I'm a human being, and I don't always necessarily want to hang out with a bunch of other human beings like we did this weekend, but I do anyway.
Yeah, and
yeah,
it is
yeah,
funny though because we've learned from, and I mean everyone, from you could take the whatever's considered the most prestigious individual in the world, to the garden, laying on the curb, whatever. And all of us are the same in our eyes, because we all have the same issue. We believe the solution's the same. And we've known people on every part of the spectrum. And it's really cool. Because when you hear when I walk in the room in any meeting or something like that, and I see a guy like him telling the same story, even though he had a different path, I hear the same story coming out of his mouth. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then I go to a different state and I hear a guy that's, 70 years old that's telling my story. I hear a female that's, in her mid-20s that's telling my story. And I'm like, this is crazy. But it is. It really doesn't matter where we came from or why in our opinions. And that's why, again, when I go back to the depression and we talk about trauma and that sort of thing, he and I, we work very hard not to place labels on that. We are who we are because of the way we are, and we know what the solution is. It doesn't matter what brought us to that point. We had to fix ourselves. I can't fix my family. I can't fix my friends. I can't fix whatever shitty events might have happened to me in the past. All I can do is figure out, okay, I know what I am now, and what do I do about it? And then we're given the solution and we do it. Simple.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I mean, because you guys are breaking down things, like I've said, that you don't have to be an alcoholic to follow these things.
Mhm.
You don't have to, you just have to be human and decide. You have to make that conscious decision to want to change,
Right.
to want to follow the steps, to want to give yourself to a higher power, whatever that is. Saying like, hey, I actually do not control my life. Like I react to things, I react to situations and experiences that are in my life, but I do not control. I do not sit here and control the way that my life is going.
Right.
Nope. I
Yeah.
can only control my responses to life. That's it.
Exactly.
It's a cool freedom.
Yeah. And it's also letting go, like you both have said, letting go of what that past you was and the past you, and, letting that go also and saying, yes, that was me. And I did that. And those were my actions. But I had, a pivotal moment, and this is where I'm going now.
Right.
Yeah, and reminds me of what we talked about on this week's episode of the podcast. We talked about all that garbage, those piles of shit that we had in our lives before actually now have meaning because we can take them and use them and help the next person. We can relate to them and say, yeah, I did the same garbage. It's okay, man. We all did it. We don't have to do it anymore. So I don't have regrets because those things have value now. I can use them to help the next person along the line. So,
Yeah.
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 Mackenzie, can you tell that we hang out? I told the same story.
Oh,
I was
all
gonna
right.
say, yeah.
All right.
I was gonna say,
I could go away
yeah,
again.
No, no, no.
yeah. Bill calls that struggles are your asset.
Yeah.
That's
It's
funny.
just
That's really neat, though.
Yeah, and I
What
think
was
it's
that, Bill?
important, especially when no, I think it's important when people listen to us is, I mean, we've been taught the same things, to do the same things, and I think it's a really good example, again, when, the physical looks versus the backgrounds, and put all that together, we both, ended up on this same, and you said it before, Mike, the same lane, the same path, whatever you wanna call it, and, we
Mhm.
have the same opinions, and you know what? We don't agree on everything, but, the cool part is that we had a conversation on a podcast this past week where I told this story and Mike said, "You were probably doing this." And I'm like, "I don't, not consciously." And then the end of it was I didn't fucking feel like arguing with him. That was number one. And I didn't mean that in a bad way because I don't. In a
Right.
real sense, I had no desire to argue with him because he and I can communicate. We don't need to argue. But it made me think, and I'm like, okay, number 1, it was plausible, and number 2, I had nothing to prove it incorrect, his opinion, so I took it as a possibility, and that's how we coexist together, and that's what we were taught. I don't have to agree with 100% of the things he says or does, but I do value the fact of where his mind comes from, and it's another opportunity, and I learned from that, and that's what we take from this program, from the people, everyone we've ever met. We steal something from in a good way, on that side of things, so
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not stealing actual, items now, Mike. You're stealing
Right,
ideas and
exactly.
experiences and thought.
Yep.
Right. We're not stealing happiness anymore.
Right.
Others' joy.
Right,
Right.
right.
Mm, that was awesome. So what would you guys say, you know, to somebody that was in your guys' old situation and getting them the help that they need?
Go ahead, Mike.
What would your advice be?
My advice would be you need to do the work. Nobody's going to hand it to you. I remember my first time, like I said, when I was about 30 years old. I walked into the rooms and I expected those people to get me sober, because that's the way I worked. I was a taker. I wasn't a giver. And it turned out I had to give things in order to receive. And but I had to do the work. Nobody could do it for me. So yeah, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to get your ass busy and you're gonna have to do some stuff, but the rewards are worth it. That's what I would say to anybody who's considering this thing. It's going to be hard. You're going to be uncomfortable. I mean, what's getting loaded? Trying to make yourself as comfortable as you can possibly be. And you're going to be uncomfortable for a while, and that's okay. But once you get past that, the comfort you're going to receive and that you're going to have is going to be better than anything you've ever gotten out of a bag or a bottle. It is for me.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Bill?
I think that the biggest thing that we've been taught, and sometimes the hardest thing, is that you can't, and Mike says it because we were taught, years ago, you can't drag somebody off a bar stool. You can't tell them what they are. You can't tell them they have a problem. All you could be is an example and be there for people. And again, sometimes planting these little seeds, maybe somebody listening to this podcast today has, if nothing else, a question mark in their head that they might have a problem with alcohol, or if nothing else, they at least have a question about how the way they're using alcohol. And who knows, maybe 6 months from now, they're like, God damn, this seems like a decent idea. Now I know where to go and look. And that's all that we can do. If somebody comes to us and asks for help, you still got to be a little careful, because if you label somebody, you could chase them away. Somebody walks up to you and says, well, I'd like to speak to you about alcohol. You're like, oh, cool. Come here, alcoholic. I'll help you. They'll be like, whoa, what? Wait a second. You just start asking them questions. Tell a story, tell stories about yourself and sooner or later, some of the shit's going to make sense. And they're going to be like, well, fuck. 3 out of the 5 things that he just told me, not only have I've done often. So maybe I need to take a look at this. So that's all it is. It's attraction, not promotion, is what we're taught.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate all of your guys' knowledge, you guys coming on, sharing your struggles to be assets for other people, and just getting to, personally meet you guys. And, technology is one of those things where that's where we got connected through. And this is where we get to make the connections and share with the world your assets and what you have gone through. So I appreciate it. Where can people find your podcast and get in contact with you guys?
The podcast is everywhere, any place that people can listen to podcasts. It's pretty simple. If you look up main one, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, all those. Sober Not Mature is the name of the podcast. Sober Not Mature on Instagram, Sober Not Mature on Facebook. Website is sobernotmature.com. And our website is the hub for everything. And yeah, the cool part is nobody else either had the nuts or the forethought to think of Sober Not Mature, which literally blew my mind that we got that name everywhere. I mean,
that is amazing.
I know. I mean, we're a bunch of immature. I mean, most alcoholics are immature in one way, shape, or form. I can't believe that we're the only one that thought about it or did something with it. So it's a beautiful thing. But Sober Not Mature anywhere. If you type it into Google, you'll find us everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most humans are not mature, but they want to act like they are.
Yeah, we don't.
Like everything prim and proper, and we don't say those things and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, if you guys want some raw posts, definitely go over and, follow Sober Not Mature. You guys are wonderful. I appreciate you guys coming on, sharing your knowledge with us, and we'll catch you guys later, all right?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of Raw Thoughts Podcast. I'd appreciate it if you could follow, like, subscribe, and share with anybody that you think would be interested in this. You can also head over to my website at rawthoughtspodcast.com and see any other guests that have been on the episodes. You could also go over to Instagram and follow at rawthoughts.podcast. I would really appreciate it, and always send me a message if you're interested in being a guest or any feedback.